Yep, you remember back a couple years ago when everybody was getting their stimmies and the stimulus checks were coming in and people were having a great resignation and quitting their jobs and telling Starbucks, you can go take this job and shove it. I got my stimmies. I'm going to stay home and watch Netflix and chill. Well, here we are in 2022 and not surprisingly to, people who had any common sense, everything kind of went down the toilet. Stock market is down more than it's been, for decades. Cryptocurrency is down, as we talked about that the other week. The only thing that seems to be holding tight so far is real estate, but there are some indicators that says that's about to go down as well, or at least it's going to soften. So the question a lot of people have is, man, I need to take my money out. I need to get my money out because if I keep my money in, I'm going to lose all this money. And there's a lot of people who have been taking their money out. And since 2020, when a lot of people got into the investment space and there was a lot of retail investors trying to catch that GameStop short thing, people started being good, savvy retail investors. And if you were paying attention, especially to the YouTube space, you heard a lot of us talking about, hey, this isn't going to go up forever. We were in a very, very, very long bull market, but eventually it's going to be a bear market. And since the United States government and a lot of governments around the world just started printing a lot of money, trillions and trillions of dollars, then things were going to catch up with us eventually, and that could lead to inflation. So what do you do with this? What do you do with your money? Should you pull your money out? And why is it that there are some crazy people now saying that no, you shouldn't pull your money out? You should buy a lot more. Welcome back to Wrestling with Finance, the YouTube financial channel for people who have wrestled with finance in the past and look to do better with it in the future. And we are talking about the future today, and we're also talking about the past a little bit. Because in the past, as I said, the government just printed tons and tons of money. And I talked to people for the last 2 years about money, and there's just a lot of bad information going on out there. And one of the things that I mentally prepared myself for, and I know a lot of other people mentally prepared themselves for, is that eventually there's going to be a crash. And especially with all the money printed and all the things that went on with the pandemic, that the crash was coming and the stock market would go down. It wasn't going up forever, and now we're seeing it. We're also seeing interest rates go up as they try to fight off inflation. And that begs a question, and I know a lot of people, they hear the word inflation, but I don't think most people actually know what inflation actually is. Now, inflation, technically, the actual dictionary definition, not the one people just made up out of their heads, but the actual definition of what inflation is when you have 2 consecutive quarters where your gross domestic product, or GDP, you hear that a lot, is in a negative. It's in a downturn. That is where we are almost at right now, because last quarter we were in a negative. It wasn't a downturn. So if next quarter winds up being the same way, we will be officially in a recession, although that's kind of a little bit deceptive because that technically means we currently are in a recession, which I think we are. And you got all this inflation going on all over the place. And again, the Fed is raising the interest rates to try to stave off all of that inflation. But all of that being said and all the crazy stuff going on, what you are probably wondering about is why are there people out there saying that you should invest now? And this is really just about cycles. In the past 100 years, there have been quite a few financial disasters on the books. Obviously, the Great Depression, we had the Great Recession, World War II, World War I. You had the dot-com crash, you had the 1937 crash, you had a lot of crashes and a lot of issues going on. And even COVID kind of counts, even though we recovered from that pretty quickly. But here's an interesting statistic that you might not know about and why some people are saying you should probably start investing now if you're not, or if you are investing, maybe it might be a good idea to put a little bit more in today. But keep in mind, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. You should do your own research and talk to your own financial advisor before making any kind of decisions on what to do with your money. I'm simply telling you what other people are doing and what I am thinking about doing. So definitely do not just listen to what I say and then go put all your money into Dogecoin and then be mad at me in 6 months when you lose it all. That's not what I'm saying to do. What I am saying to do is to look at the numbers, and some of the numbers that I found are quite interesting. For all of those calamities I just talked about, that where the markets and everything really took a nosedive, within 1 year, the majority of them recovered in a positive note 3 years after those crashes, all but one of them being the Great Depression, because it's the Great Depression, all but one of them recovered and the markets went back into a positive. And after 5 years, all of them recovered and the market recovered back into a positive. So what a lot of people are thinking right now is, yes, maybe this is the time to get involved, but some people want to stay out of it because they're like, well, we don't quite know when it's at the bottom. And there's this kind of thinking from a lot of people that, man, we're kind of messed up. You know, what if it just bottoms out? What if this is the end of everything? And there are some people and some fairly rich people and some fairly famous people on this platform who pull their money out of the market and are kind of waiting the right time to get back in when we hit the bottom. Now, one of the things that you hear, and you hear this from every personal finance person, is that you can't really time the market. It's almost impossible to time the market. They've done studies, they've done research, and it is practically impossible to time the market correctly. You might get lucky and get out of the market at the right time, but then it's even less likely that you're going to get back into it at the right time. You probably have a better chance of being struck by lightning 5 times, kissing Betty White, and actually finding all Infinity Stones and snapping Thanos out of existence before he can snap the rest of us out of existence. And I know that's fictional stuff and it doesn't exist, and that's why I'm saying it, because you have a better chance of doing any of that than actually timing the right time to get out of and back into the stock market. And again, the numbers prove it out. People who got back in when things were down after a number of years, whether it was 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, they more than doubled their money. They had a tremendous amount of growth in their accounts because they bought when things, as the old saying goes, buy low, sell high. When things go down and everybody's panicking and everybody's pulling their money out, a lot of times that might be the good time to get into it. Now, there are some caveats to this, because if you were an older person, I would say 60 or over, it might not be time for you to do that. You might be thinking about a best way of consolidating your money, because you're probably trying to live off of your income and you're not really trying to risk anything. You're not trying to wait 10 years. You got issues right now. This is a strategy I would, if I was in that situation, I probably would not. If I was in my 60s, I probably would not be putting more money into the market now. I might be thinking about doing something else with it. But for those of us who are a little bit younger, Gen Xers, Millennials, Gen Zers, whatever the generational names are these days for younger people, I would say if you're under 50, you probably got another 5 or 10 years. Obviously, if you're really young, 20s and 30s, you got 5 or 10 years. But even if you're 50, you probably got another 5 or 10 years to kind of go, all right, let me kind of sink some money into it now and wait it out. Because again, as we've seen in some of these statistics, most likely it's a cycle, and cycles go up and cycles go down. And currently, as we all know right now, we're in a downward cycle. But one thing to keep in mind right now, as we talk about all of this stuff and cycles and everything, you also have to account for the real human factor in this, and the human pain that there are people who have lost their jobs, don't have any money, are barely getting by trying to pay their rent because rent has skyrocketed, mortgages have skyrocketed, they can't get a new house, they feel stuck where they are. The job market might not be what it quite was before, and they might not be making as much money to be able to pay their expenses. I've been in that situation before. I really trimmed back when I was about 25 years old, and I realized that I had gotten the money thing completely wrong and was doing it completely wrong and really had very little money. I did shave everything I possibly could off, stayed places, stayed with people, stayed with my mom, stayed with my sister sometimes, stayed with friends sometimes, drove a beat up car, did everything I could to try to at least start saving some kind of money, having that grow over time. And I still have, even though I wasn't as heavy into it when I was 25 years old, there are stocks that I bought back then that even with everything going down now, those stocks are still up over 150% as far as a return. So that is probably the best thing I can say to you guys, especially if you're new into this and thinking about, man, why would I want to do that? Why should I just sell the stuff now? I'm telling you that as a story from my own personal experience, that stocks that I bought, there weren't that many. They were little tiny stocks that I bought, a little bit of fun, about $500 worth of stocks that I bought back when I was 25 years old, and just sunk that money into there, like, okay, this is an investment in the future. But again, for you guys out there, you got to check your own risk tolerance. What are you comfortable with investing, or do you have more priorities? Because again, a lot of people got sick parents, sick children, they themselves are sick. They might be moving, they might be in all kinds of situations. So don't feel bad and don't feel like you're missing out either if you can't go ahead tomorrow and put $1,000 in on some ETF or something else like that. You know, as bad as things are now, it's all a cycle, and eventually at some point in time things will get better, and hopefully you can take advantage of it and make a little bit of money for yourself, so the next time we are in a down cycle, it doesn't hit you as hard as it did this time. But how are you guys handling this? Do you think it is a good time to get into the market? Are you waiting to see it go down a little bit more? Or do you think that we're all absolutely insane and the entire world is about to end and you took all your money out and stashed it underneath your bed? Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Also, if you do want to get involved in some of this stuff and you do want to check it out, you can check out Robinhood and Webull in the description box below. There are affiliate links down there. Both of those companies are offering free stocks if you sign up for this service. If you're a little bit more risky and you want to get in a crypto game again and you think it's a good time now because the prices are so low, you can use the affiliate link down below to sign up with Coinbase and store them in Vault. But again, I want to know what you guys think about this situation. And until next time, be safe out there, and I'll see you guys here for more news and discussions about personal finance here on Wrestling with Finance. Have a good day.